natural.
Yep.
What is up, you guys? Welcome to Tampa Live Podcast. We're here for another week. It is, don't let me get this messed
November
up.
8th.
It's Friday, November 8th,
Yep.
you guys. So last week we talked a little bit about asset classes, short-term rentals, multifamily, a bunch of other stuff. And I know we've got some exciting stuff lined up for this week, right?
100%. I mean, we just had the president election. It's done. It's over. And I think everybody's kind of like, whew, we're ready to move forward, right? So
Right.
definitely October is a month to remember with the rates. After the Feds announced the rate, decline of 0.5%, it actually did the opposite and went up. So it's been a little crazy, a very volatile ride. And, I think after the election, the rates did go up a little bit as well. And then this past Thursday, Friday, today, the rates are dipping down. So again, it is a good sign that the rates are trending down again. I just read an article, the Feds, I think there's like a 70% chance they're estimating that the Feds will cut another quarter in
that
December.
would be awesome.
In December. So they just announced the quarter cut yesterday. And in December, there's a highly chance that they're going to cut it another quarter. So which is good. So we're going to start off 2025 just right. So. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm sorry, you guys. Does everybody want to take a moment, introduce themselves real quick?
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
I'm Tyler Nguyen, president of BlueGrey Mortgage.
I'm John Debellavue. I'm with LPT Realty, your local investment expert. And
I'm Kristie King, also with LPT Realty, your local luxury expert.
yes, we love it. So we've got an all-star crew today.
100%.
All-star crew.
100%.
Awesome. So we know the rates just dropped a quarter point. You just spoke about that. So how do you think it's going to affect the marketplace, and are consumers actually going to see that?
Right. That's a great question. I would tell you that usually it's already baked in or priced in.
Okay.
Right. When they announced the quarter, I think, again, I assumed it, I expected it, and we didn't really see any adjustments yet. And then now they just announced that there's a good chance for another quarter decline in the rate. We're seeing pricing get better for interest rate in this current market.
Because typically you see the rate go down a couple weeks before the Feds make their announcement.
100%.
Because I think people are expecting the announcement to come, and then the next
and then
day
boom.
they're going to see this drop,
Yeah,
and they
exactly.
don't, and they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And getting them to understand that that drop happened a couple weeks before the announcement.
Right.
And kind of retraining their brain because they're
Mm-hmm.
calling or looking or expecting that, okay, let's start tomorrow.
Exactly.
Because the rates, the Fed just cut the rates yesterday. And
Yeah.
you're like, well, that's kind of already in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Built in,
Yeah.
Built in. Yeah, no,
But
but
they've been talking about tons of different rate drops that we're going to be expecting, and we're finally starting to
Yeah.
see those gates open and those
Yeah.
drops kind of start to trickle in that we've been looking and hoping for over a year.
Yeah, exactly. And I would tell you this year, we listen to so many economists like on a daily basis, and this year has probably been like the worst year of projections.
Oh my gosh. So many people have had
I'm like, why am I paying $250 for this market update? And it's totally wrong,
Yes.
So, I mean, this is probably, October has been the most challenging because, again, we're, educating the consumer, like, hey, let's float the rate. It should get better, and every week's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Like, we have to pull the trigger now, lock the rate right now before it gets any worse, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we've been telling our team, our loan officers on the team right now is just lock. Once you get the contract, just lock the interest rate in, and then if the rates get better, we can always move the loan to a different
Right.
lender, right? So
Right.
that's
Right.
our strategy at this point. We're not floating anything. We're just locking as we go because it's so
Okay.
volatile right now.
Yeah, and that's one thing, working with
Yeah.
not just a commercial bank as a lender, but working with somebody who
Like a
has
broker.
different
Yep.
a broker, different programs to
Yeah.
bounce between.
Right.
Sometimes even throughout the transaction,
Right.
regardless if you've locked.
Yeah.
Something changes, something
Yeah.
happens, and you need to be able to flip to another lender
Oh, yeah.
who can help you
Yeah.
get to the closing table.
Exactly. Yeah, and we did that a lot. I hate to say it, we did that a lot in September, this past September, where the rates were dipping, and we're like, oh, it's getting better. So we're moving loans to different lenders, transferring their appraisal, and that's the luxury we have with being on the broker side. So,
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. How's your market, Kristie?
My market's good. I would have to say that people are finally getting off the fence. They're
Right.
getting a little bit more excited. I think that there was a lot of paralysis with the election coming up,
Yeah.
with the interest rates,
Right.
with the talk about what was going to happen with the interest rates, and people putting out a lot of false information about the sky is falling, things are going to crash, I'm going to
100%.
wait for that steal and deal.
Right.
And you're not seeing the numbers go down.
No.
They're not climbing like they did during COVID, but I
Exactly.
think COVID gave everybody this weird false sense of what reality was.
Right.
And they haven't quite like come to the realization that never existed before.
Right.
It was this weird
Time.
time
Yep.
that is not going to happen again probably.
Yeah, really like a swing market
Yeah.
almost.
Yes.
You know, if you want to, call it something, a swing. It was like a swing market.
Yes, and getting people to come back to reality, to realize this is the norm, not the new norm.
Right.
This is the norm.
Yeah.
You just need to reset your expectations a little bit.
Right.
But I would say things are moving quickly if, you are doing everything you need to do to make sure you
Right.
can prepare your house to be sold.
And you mentioned this holiday so far. You've been picking up more
Yeah.
traction, right?
I've got tons of listing appointments this weekend.
Love that.
That's awesome.
People are finally like, okay, the chaos is gone with everything that's been on the media, everything that's
Right.
been on the news,
Yeah.
and we can all just like reset, realize we can move forward. Like
Yeah.
we're not going to get buried in all the
Yeah.
mess. I'm ready to move.
That's
Let's
awesome.
go. And some people are seeing who bought during COVID or bought in the last year, new
Mm-hmm.
construction particularly, they're getting their tax bills.
Oh, yeah.
And even though hopefully their agent told them, don't look at right now you're being taxed on the land.
Yeah.
Right.
When that reassessment comes around,
Yeah.
you're going to be taxed on your property, and it's
Right.
going to look at the price you paid on your property.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be huge. I had a listing appointment last week, and I had met with them in February. They were thinking about moving.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband's like, we're not moving. The wife's like, we're moving. We're going to another state. And I said, you know what? Let's just put a pin in this. Let's,
Yeah.
just relax.
Wait until that tax bill comes
And I
around.
said, FYI, when I pulled your information for your property, your tax is assessed at land value. When you get your tax bill this fall,
Right.
it is going to increase significantly.
Yeah.
Be prepared for $12,000 tax bill.
Wow.
And they're like,
Wow.
oh, yeah, okay. Well,
It
lo and
happened.
behold, she calls me. She's like, we're ready to sell. And I looked at the husband. He's like, we're ready to sell. And we had a conversation about the
Right.
price. And then she's like, and guess what? I got my tax bill. Can you believe this? I said, I know. I told you
Right.
in February.
Yeah.
Do you
Right.
remember? Be prepared. Start
Right.
saving now. Because if you haven't been escrowing it or putting it back, even if you did, it was projected on the land. It was not
Right.
projected on the
Yeah.
full value.
Right.
I said, so your mortgage company, if that's who's been escrowing it, is going to come to you and be like, oh, dear homeowner, it's lovely, but you are short $10,000.
Yeah.
Some of them.
How you want to pay this?
Yeah, how do you want to pay it?
Yeah.
And if you didn't escrow it and you were paying it yourself, which
Yeah.
a lot of them do,
Yep.
be prepared to write that check. And
For
some
sure.
people are in a position to do that,
Right.
and some people
A lot
are
of people
not.
are not. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I think people don't realize is that's, also applicable to resale. So if you're in an area that in the last 2-3 years has skyrocketed in value, areas of South Tampa, West Tampa, St. Petersburg,
Yep.
they get hit with those higher assessments as well the next year around. And a lot of those homeowners aren't like mentally prepared, like you said.
Right.
So
It always amazes me the people who don't homestead because they don't know anything, especially
Right.
transplants that come in.
yeah.
Their agent wasn't educating them on what they needed to do, and then
Right.
following up with them in the spring when it was time to file for homestead to
Right.
make sure that they do that.
Well, and for the consumers that don't work with an agent like you or myself, who's going to say, your tax bill is going to adjust next
Yeah.
year.
Right.
And here's where we can go to get an estimate of what that's going to look like
Right.
and actually walk them through it. So, once again,
And
you're
all the
an
counties
asset.
have a calculator on there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. They have
You
that
could
tax
go
estimator.
super easy.
For sure.
Super easy. And
Takes
also,
5 minutes.
Yeah.
People don't educate enough on portability, porting
Yeah.
your homestead.
Mm.
When they sell a property
Mm-hmm.
and then porting your homestead to take that savings, because let's say you bought your home in 2004,
Yeah.
you sold it in 2021, you made a nice chunk of money.
Right.
And then when you go to buy something more, you can port your homestead over a portion of
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So it's another thing that people don't realize.
Yeah.
That can deduct off your tax bill and save you some money that
Oh,
way.
yeah.
So working with a great agent that understands all the dynamic and all the pieces of the puzzle
Right, right.
when it comes to homeownership.
Saving money.
Saving money,
Saving
you do.
money,
There's,
yeah.
and it could be
Yeah.
a little bit here, a little bit there. There's
Yeah.
different, for veterans, their deductions. And even if you're not 100% permanently disabled
Yeah,
veteran,
yeah.
you can still qualify for very minor, mild. There's a $5,000.
Exactly.
Granted, it's $5,000,
Right.
and it's only going to be, $100 off your tax bill. But
Right.
all that little bit,
It adds
knowing all
up.
those little secrets to the
Yeah.
sauce, help just make sure you're educated, that you're paying
Right.
attention, and getting people to understand what to look for. We just had information on our ballot about your homestead.
Yeah.
Like educating your clients, educating people to understand what they're voting for, what that means. I had so many of my clients call me and they're like, "What do I vote?" And I'm not going to tell you what to vote. I'm going to explain to you what the bill means.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to explain to you how it's going to affect you or other people, and then I want you to continue to do your
yeah.
education, and you vote how you feel it should turn out.
Right.
100%.
But they did. They were just like, "What do I do?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Educate yourself. Let me help you out. I'm going to tell
This is
you
where
what
you
it
look
means."
for this information,
Yeah,
right?
because
Mhm.
if you go online for any of that, there's a lot of misinformation,
A lot of fake news.
and a lot of
Yeah.
confusing information
Right.
because depending on who you're reading,
Yeah.
they're going to spin
Of course,
the narrative
of course.
to fit their agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
no.
and even the general wording on the ballot for the homestead changes was like, huh? Like, the wording and the verbiage and how they phrase everything can be very confusing.
Yes, and
to
and on that one, it was
anybody,
very confusing.
You know, to anybody, really.
Yeah.
Even me as a realtor, I was sitting there like, okay.
They definitely twist and turn their words, and we
Yeah.
talked about it in our office. We were like, okay, let's pick apart.
I think that's a good idea.
This-
Actually, can you share?
Yeah.
Can you guys share what you guys understood about the new homestead change?
Gonna ask me right now.
I'm like,
Let me pull it up. I have to look at it to be honest.
Yeah,
Once
yeah.
I voted early.
Uh-huh.
I purged it from my brain.
So there's a lot of complexities to it,
Yeah.
but
There were.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I said, people who are transplants don't understand
Yeah.
homesteading their property.
right.
And so just getting them over that edge and then ask them to pick it apart even further
Right.
and understand how these bills reflect. So the bill was whether or not it should be adjusted for inflation.
correct.
That's what the bill was. It took
Okay.
me a minute to
No, you're good.
bring
You're
it back.
good.
It was about
Right.
whether or not because the homestead stayed stagnant. It's been
Yeah.
the 25K, 50K, depending
Yeah.
if you're married,
100%.
forever.
Right.
But the property values have
Gone
increased
up.
significantly
Exactly.
since they priced that bill. So
Exactly.
should the homestead exemption
Me
be allowed to have
with the
inflation?
market.
Yeah.
Just with the market.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yep.
basically
Yep.
what that translates to for, the everyday homeowner who chooses to
Yeah.
homestead, and this was my understanding of it, is that you're going to be able to save more money
That's
in the
good.
long run.
That's good.
You're going to
Yes.
be able to save more money on your
Yeah.
homestead exemption.
Yep.
Dependent.
Yeah.
And the way that they're obviously going to, grade it, so to speak, would change as well because it's always been joint or spouse
yeah.
and then set limits.
But every pro has a con. So let's say that everybody votes yes, they want it to
Mm-hmm.
come with inflation. You pay less taxes, which is great. But there's still going to be money needed to maintain the things for your county.
Right.
So if you're not paying them in your property taxes,
Yeah.
it's got to be paid from something. So
Yeah.
in essence, in my opinion, you're somehow robbing Peter to pay Paul somewhere.
Yeah,
So it
that's what I
depends
was
on how
thinking, yeah.
how much money you make, how many
Right.
your spending habits are in your community,
Right.
how that deficit is going to be made up. So I'm not going to say what my opinion was on it, but I'm just saying, yes, it's great. Yes, you're going to pay less property taxes.
Right.
Yes, it's going to help the average person.
Yeah.
However,
You're
your
gonna be paying it
community is
somewhere else.
still going to need the
Yeah.
funds that are no longer there now. How are they going to be made up? Is it going to
Yep.
be, maybe they're going to increase sales tax, or
Well,
they're
and
going to
I
tax
was
something
going to
else?
say, typically
Yeah.
what we see with that, right, is they'll go and increase sales tax a little bit, or they'll do a millage,
Yeah.
or they'll do
Yeah.
a penny for the roads, or whatever.
Right.
Which
Right.
we saw that a lot in a lot of places on the ballot. We saw the 1 cent to go towards roads. We saw millage increase for local schools set
Yeah.
for a certain term. I think for a lot of them it was like 2050, something like that. And so.
That's where you
Again,
educate them about everything.
right,
You can't just
right.
say, vote yes, vote no, or it just means this. Well, yeah, it doesn't, but you need to broaden your thinking whenever you look at any amendment that's on the ballot.
Yeah.
And think just not outside of that one little box, but
Yeah.
okay, like how does that affect all the boxes around it?
Well, and yeah, exactly like you said. If you, do you want better roads?
Yeah.
Are you willing? Are you willing to pay a cent more for better roads?
Because
Or
people
are you
love to
willing
complain
pay a
about
millage
teachers being
increase?
underpaid,
Yeah,
our
exactly.
police force being understaffed, the
Right.
roads being crap. But when they
Right.
see a bill, they're like, vote no, I don't want to increase my taxes. Well, where do you want it to come from?
So,
Right.
I mean, end of story, like you said. Make educated decisions
Yes.
on this stuff, you guys.
Right.
Read it, research it. Don't jump the gun and
And
just
go
assume an
to-
increase is bad.
Non-political sites.
Right.
Don't go to NBC News or at
Non-biased.
Fox.
Yeah.
You have to go to non-biased.
Yeah.
Just go straight to where you can read from the government about the bill, and then
Right.
just start picking it apart.
Yeah.
And then have conversations with people, whether it's someone in the field, whether it's your neighbor or whoever. Talk it out.
Right.
It kind of helps you understand it a little bit better. That's
Yeah.
what we do within our own,
Right.
industry. We sit
Yeah.
there and say, okay, let's talk this out. How's this look? You and I had a conversation today about whether or not you should invest the money to upgrade before you list,
Right.
or you list it as it is.
As is, yeah.
And at what point do you stop and say you can upgrade this? But then
Right.
I said it just draws more attention. This hasn't been upgraded, so
Right.
then that screams at you. It's like where's that stopping point? It's like pulling
Right.
the thread.
Right.
You got to decide. Do you pull a thread? How far do you pull it? Do you leave it? What do you do?
Right.
So
Well, and kind of rolling on that, we had the 2 hurricanes.
Yep.
A lot of places were hit really hard.
yeah.
A lot of homes need to be renovated. What do these sellers do, you guys?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got FEMA coming in, and we've got the municipalities coming in, and if you're a homeowner and you were affected by this and you don't know, FEMA has a 50% rule, right?
That's
you
exactly what I was
know
thinking
about the
about,
50%
yeah.
rule.
Yes.
Yep.
So me and Kristie are very familiar with the 50% rule, and her being in luxury, I'm sure she might even be more familiar, but.
It definitely hits harder.
It hits harder, right?
Luxury
So
level. Yeah.
basically, you guys, if your home was hit by the storm and flooding and you're having to renovate or remodel due to flooding, and the valuation on the renovation work is 50% or more, let's really call it 49% because that's what they're looking at, or more, the value as is of your property on market. So if the renovation is 50% or more the value of your home as it's marketable to the public, they're going to require you to either bring it to flood code elevation, or you're going to have to tear it down
and build
to code. So what we're going to see there is, going to be
You're going to see
insane.
a lot of investors coming in.
Yep.
A lot of people cannot afford to because they think, I have homeowners insurance. It will cover it. No. It's not going to cover all of it.
Right.
And a lot of times they're not even going to pay you out, and this isn't to be negative, but it's just the reality. We all know how insurance companies are. They're not going to pay you out 100% of your dwelling coverage.
Right.
It just typically doesn't happen unless it's truly a complete and total loss, and you maybe get a public adjuster in there, which a lot of people, I always encourage you guys, get a public adjuster in there who's representing you,
Right.
not the insurance companies,
Exactly.
right?
100%.
And fight for that dwelling coverage so that you have something to rebuild. Or your other option, if you don't have a ton of money, is get connected with a realtor who can connect you with Tyler and explore your renovation and rebuild options and talk to multiple contractors, get those bids built out
Yep.
so that you can meet those FEMA requirements
Right.
and go ahead and renovate. The reality is, you can talk to a contractor, explain the situation, and get a number on that invoice that meets the FEMA requirements.
I think that's a great idea.
And that's all I'm going to say, you guys.
And there are some great programs that they can have.
What you pay the contractor privately is your business. What
Exactly.
you have on the paper is
Exactly.
FEMA's business. And that's all I'm going to say, you guys.
Well, it's easy for you to say because you have so much experience
Yeah.
with rehabbing properties.
Correct.
The
Yes.
average person does not. They're in an emotional state.
100%.
They're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They're confused.
Yeah.
They have vultures coming in to take advantage of them.
Right.
They've got people knocking on the door trying to buy their property for pennies
Right.
in the dollar. They've got contractors coming in trying to get deposits and then in bolting. They've
Yeah.
got people coming in who are not bonded or insured. Who don't have a license, trying to do work that is not up to code or scary at best.
Right.
And as a community, it's important that we help everybody out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wish we all had like jerseys on that could be like, I'm pro, like here to help, and
Right.
that's the opposing team.
Right.
Because everybody's kind of mixing in. And
Yeah.
I've got neighbors who have properties that were on the water and affected, and I've talked to them a lot about, what are you going to rebuild? Are you going to sell?
Right.
Here's some great loan programs
Right.
for displaced people. Even if you weren't a homeowner, you were a renter,
Exactly. Yep,
and where you were
100%.
renting was flooded and you're displaced,
Right.
you can get a zero down loan.
FHA, yeah.
FHA loan
FHA
to get you
203H.
into
Yeah.
a property.
Right.
And people who are renters don't even understand that affects them. They're like, I didn't own a property. Like, how's this going to help me?
Right.
There are so many programs. If you just reach out and ask the questions and talk to the professionals and not just, Joe at the coffee shop or whatever,
Right.
or, Stan who rings your doorbell and says, I've got an investor,
Right.
and, you get pennies on the dollar. It's devastating for them, and I cannot even imagine.
Well, and even people from our own profession, I saw realtors the day after the storm, hopping out of their cars with a smile on their face, going and knocking on people's homes, destroyed, hanging door hangers.
Yeah.
Let me sell your house.
That's horrible.
And it always brings out two sides. I think, we like to focus on the positive here and always talk about how it brings out the humanity and the best side of the community. But there is two sides to it. So, make sure you're reaching out to the resources that care.
Yeah.
And talking about loans and renovation products, what kind of stuff does BlueGrey have access to for these people to rebuild?
Yeah, no, I mean, Kristie, you brought in a great point. I'm actually literally helping a client right now. He was renting a house, young guy. He has a good job. He's like, Tyler, I was renting and my property got flooded. I got paid by FEMA. Also, I can get documentation from my property manager, and I'm thinking about buying. So I was like, yeah, I think you're a great candidate to qualify for the FHA 203K. So we're going to be doing a loan. He's going to come out with 0% down. We're going to try, to go have the realtor negotiate for the seller, for the closing costs. So he might come out with anything, or very minimum, right? So again, these are, situations where you could take, there's opportunities in every situation, right? So that's a program, and we are getting inquiries about renovation loans right now. And a lot of people don't know you can do a refinance renovation loan. You don't have to do a purchase. And just talking out loud with you guys, think about this, right? Right now we have a lot of properties that need some work.
Yeah.
If your buyers are open-minded to, hey, let's make this your dream home, you can buy this as a renovation loan. Use a renovation loan, do 5% down, 3.5% down, and renovate it to your likings, right? So there's so many different loan products right now, and a lot of them are catering to remodeling.
And for those people who are not selling, are not in a position to refi, who had a good rate or whatever, but maybe they lost some time off of work or they've had some expenses with this, you can also talk to your mortgage broker about some forbearance.
Yep, 100%.
And also call him to potentially say, negotiate, is there anything you can do with my
deferred
rent?
your payments.
Yeah.
You can do deferred payments right now.
I mean, 2 months of payments, even though
it adds up.
It adds up. It gives you that little bit of breathing room to be able to, pay for the removal of your damaged flooring and your baseboards or whatever and get things done while you're waiting for this money to come in from your insurance and
100%.
FEMA. And it just, some breathing room is sometimes all someone needs just to get some clarity and surround yourself with the right people. Just because you're reaching out to a mortgage broker or a realtor, it doesn't mean you have to sell or refinance.
No,
we're here to answer your questions.
Exactly. We're advising you.
Yes,
I think the important thing is,
exactly.
take a moment, breathe, slow down, and, try not to make any super
rash decisions.
Quick decisions.
Right.
And then as far as requirements for those products, what are people looking at? Where do people need to be to, get approved for a product like that? Either the FHA or like a refinance renovation loan.
Yeah, I would say for the FHA 203K, the biggest question, I think the biggest thing people need to know is it does require a little bit more paperwork, right? You need to get more documentation that you truly were affected, right? You got to get a FEMA from FEMA. You got to get it from your property manager or the landlord that, hey, there's evidence and I can show you whatever. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle to jump through, right? And for the renovation loans, again, long as you're renovating, you're making something new or better, it makes sense, right? So one thing about the renovation loans, you cannot lift your house, okay? You cannot elevate your house. So that's something that they will not do with the renovation loans. So there's ways around it. Some of the things I've heard so far is using the FEMA money to lift up the home and then using the renovation loans to remodel the home, right? So again, there's different ways, and I think, like you said, just talk to your advisors, get multiple quotes.
And this is a way for some renters to finally get into homeownership.
100%, 0% down, 100%.
Like you just, I always talk about the first house I bought. And how my experience to go through that, and it was great. Like I assumed a VA loan.
Nice.
I had to borrow money from my parents to make up the difference.
Right.
But had I not got my foot in that door with that VA loan and 0% down, I would have never been in the multiple homes that I was able.
Exactly.
Like, it
Yeah.
may not be your forever home,
Exactly.
but as a starter home, it gets your foot in the door.
Yeah.
You build equity. You can
The
sell
first
it.
home
on.
is a stepping stone.
It
is.
is. It's
It's
a stepping stone.
it's
And
a
so many
entry point.
people,
Yeah.
the younger generation, they want here,
Yeah.
and they don't understand their parents or their
Yeah.
grandparents
Started down here.
and did this step. And
Yeah.
I think this loan program for
Yeah.
these people who are affected is a great way to get their foot in the door of home ownership,
Exactly.
which will be just life changing for them if they surround themselves with the right people, educate themselves, and understand what a value this will bring to them.
Yeah.
Because
This is an opportunity.
Even if you stay in that home until you pay it off,
Right.
you own it.
Yeah.
You no longer have to pay rent.
Exactly.
It's yours.
Exactly.
You
And I
don't
think
need
right
to
now
do what
too-
you want to with it.
We
Yeah.
talked about that earlier at the office. When you asked me how big our house was right now, I was like 1,250 square feet, but our first home was 850 square feet. It was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
Right.
Now it's a rental. It gives me a little more than $300 a month. And we're about to refinance our current house and do the same thing. And so it's like when you think about it that way, I'm just turned 31. I could be retired by, before I'm 45, just on the track I'm headed by buying a house every single year as a primary,
Right.
and then using the rule that we need to upgrade or whatever for
Superior
whatever
trait. Yeah,
whatever
any superior
reason,
trait.
and
Uh-huh.
superior trade each year.
Yep.
And buy another home each year.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
And you're building a single family portfolio with 10% down on each house instead of 20% like a investment product. And you get 10 houses.
Yeah. And you can go low as 5% down too.
Money, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can go low as 5% down, and I love the
if
strategy.
you have
John.
good
Yeah.
tax history,
Yeah.
if you're W-2,
Yep.
a lot of us realtors were 1099, or we
We get paid.
we get paid, but not all of us file our taxes on time. So,
I am a rule follower. I'm not gonna lie, I am a rule follower.
well, I
Kudos to you.
I am.
applaud
If I
you.
do something wrong, I will even tell on myself.
Well, don't tell on me.
But I think
But yeah.
again, there's opportunities right now.
Yeah.
I think
There are great opportunities,
yeah.
and I think the average person who has not been in home ownership should take advantage of this opportunity.
Right.
Because
Even if you're on the fence.
yeah, if
You
interest
can get
rates
a good
go
deal.
down,
Yeah,
property values are going nothing but up in
Yeah.
Tampa Bay area.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, nothing but up.
Yeah.
We all looked at hindsight. Man, in 2008, if we'd have bought all those properties, if
I
2001,
know.
Even 2018.
yes, and
Yeah.
you look back and you're like,
That's right.
oh my gosh, why did I sit there and be like, well, what's the housing market going to do?
Right.
I mean, historically
remember-
speaking, that is one of the best investments you can
Yeah,
ever make, and
right.
you have to go back and look at that. Look
Yeah.
at your parents, your grandparents. Look at you. It's just
Yeah.
it's a
the most
such-
successful people, they own multiple real
Yes.
estate, right?
Yeah.
And again, it appreciates every year, and that's what people need to understand. You buy, you hold, and
Yeah.
if you hit the right time, where like 2021 when property skyrocketed,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing. I made my money from that too.
Yeah.
I mean,
so,
people who
yeah.
bought like their first home in 2018 in this area, when you
Oh.
could, when
I
you
did.
when you
Yeah.
could get a bungalow in West Tampa or in Seminole Heights for 80 or 100, renovated.
yeah.
Right.
Because the investors were buying them at 40 or 50, dilapidated, putting 20, 30 into them, and then they were selling them for 100, 115.
Right.
I mean, they were not that expensive.
No.
You could still get moderately renovated homes that
Right.
you could live in for less than 150 in those areas. And now you can't,
You
can't touch it.
find-
It's like
now-
300, 400, 500,
I remember
I mean,
everybody
yeah.
saying, "Oh, it's going to crash. It's going to crash. It's going to crash." It hasn't. It's balanced
Yeah.
out. We're in a normal market,
This
like
is
Kristie touched on
completely
earlier. This is
different.
we're in a
Yeah.
completely normal,
Yeah, we
balanced
are.
market
We are.
that's leaning now in the buyer's favor.
Yep.
But we've got a lot of people, I think, still on the fence because of rates. We've got
Yeah.
some slow in the market because of the hurricanes, but there's a lot of opportunity, like we've been talking about. You have, entry level homes that are at reduced prices, got 2 inches of water in them. That would be great for a loan product with Tyler.
Yep.
FHA, you're doing baseboards, you guys. If you find a house that someone's letting go of at a discount where they got 2 or 3 inches of water, you're doing baseboards. No electrical,
Yeah.
maybe some cabinets.
Right.
Minimal loan.
Yeah. All cosmetic, right?
Yeah.
So.
And once those rates start to go down, it's
Yep.
going to open the floodgates
yeah.
of getting people off the fence.
Yeah.
People who've been waiting to move up but couldn't quite afford to will,
Right,
which is
right.
going to open up more entry level homes that are
Right.
going to be available for first time home buyers.
Yeah.
We just got to keep.
But it's going to get competitive too. If they
Oh,
wait.
yeah.
It is.
Yes.
It's going to
You know,
make
if
it
you
much
wait,
more competitive.
Yeah,
That's why if
exactly.
you got the opportunity to get your
Take
foot in
now.
the door now,
Yeah.
the signs could not be any louder.
Yeah.
Like there should be billboards up and down the road.
Right.
This is your time.
Yeah.
Listen to the message.
Right.
Someone's helping you out.
Concessions, credits are negotiable right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and we are seeing more people sit on market, but, you know, we were talking about that earlier. And
Yes
you
and
were
no.
saying that not all of your sellers are as motivated to move their properties as
No,
others.
I wouldn't say I have necessarily an issue with my sellers being motivated. I think I do a really good job of educating them
Yeah.
and making sure they're realistic. And also, you know, the way your agent markets your property makes
Right.
a huge difference. You can't just put a sign in the yard and call it a day.
Right.
It's not 2,000.
Yeah.
Done. I'm
Right.
sorry.
Right.
And even then, shame on them for doing just that.
Right.
But I would say my buyers are a little bit slower. They're on the fence a little bit more.
They're more cautious.
They're more. I wouldn't say cautious. They
Yeah.
just they don't want to compromise.
Right.
And they don't have to. Things aren't flying so fast, so they can take their
There's
time
more options.
and look at the
Yeah.
proproperties, and they can wait.
They
But
already have a house. I get
they
that
have
a
a
lot,
house.
right? You know,
yeah,
there's
they're
no
not.
rush.
You know,
Yeah.
it's one thing if you have sold a house and you've got a closing date and you've got to move
Yeah.
on.
Right.
But most of my clients are able to be able to do both at the same time or
Right.
move into a new one before they sell the other one. But I would have to say my sellers are very realistic and they're doing great. I'm seeing properties go under
Oh
contract.
yeah, absolutely.
Very quickly.
Oh,
if
yeah.
your home is, well
Move-in
maintained,
ready,
move-in
yep,
ready,
yep, location.
staged properly, you make it available to sell, to show,
Right.
and you are marketing properly, it's going to go
Yeah,
quickly.
100%
But if
agree.
you tie your agent's arms behind their back and say, well, I don't want to keep it clean, or I don't want to declutter, depersonalize, or I can only show it at these hours, then it's just going to reduce your
Yeah.
your buyer pool.
Of course. 100%.
Every little push you give them, they'll be like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll move on to something else.
I think the one thing I learned is like the first time you guys list it is like that time is crucial.
Oh,
When
yeah.
you just
So
go
crucial.
live, right? When you just
Yep.
go live, you have to do everything, right? Like
Oh, yes.
availability, everything, right?
And
Everything has to go quickly.
definitely coaching to make sure your home
Yeah.
is ready. Do not go on the market
If you're
until
not.
it's ready.
Right.
Make sure those pictures are perfect.
Right.
Make sure,
Yeah.
everything is done to the T. Every
Right.
little bit, curb appeal makes a difference.
Yeah.
Good photography makes a difference.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I met with a young agent the other day, and he had his first listing. He's with another brokerage, but I said, "Did you take those pictures with your cell phone?"
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, yeah, he's like, I didn't know a vendor, and I said, call me. I could have got it. Like, who call your mentor, call your broker, call anybody, but don't. I said, don't let excuses
Yeah.
stand in front or in your way of being successful.
Yeah.
Right.
I said it's easy to say I didn't have it, so I
Yeah.
just did what I had,
Right.
rather than
Well,
how
and
to figure out.
we're out of the COVID years, you guys. Like you can't just pop something up with any
Yeah, but we
any
got
type of photo
a lot of
and
agents
sell
who
it.
joined,
Right.
became a realtor because
Right.
they thought it was so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're bringing that mentality, and so filtering through all that. But
Yeah.
Well, being in a real estate market and a normal real estate market like we are now,
Right.
I think will really show a lot of the people who thought that being a loan broker or being a realtor or any profession involved in the real estate industry was easy, right?
Yeah, 100%. We're
And
seeing a lot of
Yeah.
people fall out right now. They're quitting. They're not doing this anymore. So, and I tell my team members, right now, if you can make it through this market, you can make it through any market. right?
Absolutely.
it's
Right?
not for
Absolutely.
the weak of heart
It's
at
not
all.
for the
If
weak of
you've
heart.
been able to
Yeah.
produce
Yep.
2024 and keep production consistent
Yeah.
anywhere near what you were doing last year,
Yep.
you're doing something right.
100%.
And you just need to keep it up and
Keep going. Keep staying
with
consistent.
it.
Yep.
Regarding those products, Tyler, is the FHA Zero Down, is that also available on non-renovation products?
It is.
Okay.
It is. So the gentleman I'm working with right now, he's looking at homes that are move-in ready.
Okay.
So again, he was a renter. He got affected by the storms. He's using this FHA 203H, and it's 0% down for move-in ready homes.
I think that's so important for consumers to realize, because I'm sure Kristie hears it. I hear it all day.
Right.
Where are we going to get the money for the down payment?
Right.
Especially if you've lost everything.
Yeah.
Your furniture,
right.
your clothing,
Even
usually
people,
your car.
even the young people, the Gen X, the Gen Z, the people not affected by this storm, who feel like home ownership has always been inaccessible to them. That
Well,
it's about and you and I both know a lot of them, because a lot of them are my friends. They want to start out in a 2,000 square foot home, and you have to be realistic. We can get you in a great starter home, 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, something like that. Maybe it's got a den, so you could use that as a third guest room, something like that.
I've got a 24-year-old and a 27-year-old.
Very reasonable price.
And everything they show me that they want to buy. And every time I just bring up their income.
And how much do you want to pay monthly?
Yeah.
If you guys want to find out what you can afford, definitely reach out to Tyler so he can crunch some numbers for you.
100%.
Talk to you about these FHA zero down programs, because I think it's so important to know that home ownership is accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
There's just
it's a simple conversation.
Simple conversation. It's again, it really is a true free consultation just to get to know where you're at financially, and then you can always plan, right? You work on a strategy to get you to the next
Exactly.
step,
like
right?
if you aren't there yet,
Yeah.
you can help advise them and be like, okay, if you work on these things
Right.
within X amount of time, you can be in home ownership.
Exactly. And they can reach out to you guys,
Like
right?
for me, I borrowed money from my parents
Yeah.
to make up that difference in the assumable loan I assumed.
Yeah.
But back then, interest rates were 8. I assumed a
know.
6% loan.
Yep.
Like that helped me be able to afford.
We rented like a primary suite in somebody's house for 8.5 months, almost a year, to save up money to buy our first house, which again, you guys, was 850 square feet. So it's like, sometimes you got to make those sacrifices to get to where you want to be. And
I tell my kids, it's the little expenses that make you poor.
100%.
It's going to get your nails done, going to get coffee every day at Starbucks,
right?
Buying the newest cell phone as soon as it drops.
And until you're making 6 figures, 150 plus a year, you shouldn't be doing those things.
Yeah,
but they do.
You don't have the expenditure to have those commodities every day like you want to.
Yeah.
Right.
And you said you do a lot of jumbo loans. So I know, Tyler, you have access to jumbo loans.
We do. And I'll tell you a story. We're helping a client right now down in Fort Lauderdale. He's under contract for 1.8, and he's putting a hefty amount down, and we're going to be financing probably over $1 million. And
that's awesome.
And what I'll tell you is it's a different market. These clientele they're not buying this home because they're successful people, right? Very, very educated, very analytical. So at that point, what you're doing is you want to make sure they're getting the best monthly payment they can get. And again, even though they're buying at that purchase price, they're just like any other consumer. They want to make sure the payment is low as possible, right? So again, it is a challenge, but we do have products out there. Client, he owns a big architecture firm, and
awesome.
So again, we're structuring a self-employment clientele, so we're giving him option A, option B, of course, using the tax returns. But as you know, sometimes you don't file everything you make, right? So that's the problem. That's the way it is. But
if you own multiple businesses, there's a lot of things.
It's a juggling act.
It is. It's a juggling act. So again, you have that conversation with the client. Say, hey, look, this is what it looks like with your tax return. This is what we can do, and if we can't do this, this is the plan B. Either way, we got you covered, right?
That's why it's important to go with someone who understands jumbo loans.
Yeah.
You don't want to connect with a broker that does VA loans or FHA loans.
Right.
It's a completely different beast, all the different loan programs, and working with someone who has experience in the type of program you're trying to work with is very important.
It is. It is. It can make or break your deal. It can make your life a living hell, as you know. So, like you were saying earlier, buying a home, especially your primary home, is is very emotional,
Yes.
right? So you have to be compassionate for these clientele and, understand like this is the biggest purchase of their lives.
It is.
So they're gonna overreact.
I always say I would rather get married or have a kid than buy or sell a home.
Yeah.
It's less stressful.
I think we all been yelled at least once or twice, right? I mean, it's just a
yeah,
part of the
of
game.
course.
But as long as you get to the finish line, they get the keys. I think that's when everything changes. They're happy. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I can just tell you that happens, right? So
Everybody loves
yeah,
that day.
yeah.
It's such an accomplishment.
It
it's
is.
the American dream.
It's the American dream.
Home
100%.
ownership.
Yeah.
And, I don't care if it's their first home
Yeah.
or their 50th home.
Yeah.
It's still, you get that giddy
You
feeling.
still, yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like Christmas morning for a
Yeah.
4-year-old.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
100%.
That's just a feeling everybody should experience. And it never goes away. I don't care how many homes you own.
Right. And guess what? You can always go back to renting if you don't like it. So,
I can sell your home for you.
exactly.
You guys, thank you so much for joining us on Tampa Live Podcast. We're going to wrap up. We've talked about mortgages. We've talked about pretty much, everything.
Homestead.
Everything relevant right
Yeah.
now.
FEMA.
FEMA.
I love that one. That was good.
Mortgages.
It's definitely a vegetable soup
FEMA.
topic.
Right. Seriously.
Your options to renovate and rebuild. So stay tuned. Come back and see us next week. And have a great Friday.